Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome everyone to the webinar on the role of energy policies in shaping energy access dialogue in displacement contexts. My name is Diane Röschen, and I will be your moderator in today's webinar. We are very happy to have you all. Please note this webinar is organized by the GIZ project Energy Solutions for Displacement Settings, ESDS, and it is part of an ongoing webinar series on energy in the humanitarian context. Today, we have invited 3 policymakers from 3 African countries who will share their journey to draft relevant policies that integrate the energy needs of refugees and also of nearby host communities. So as usual, for this webinar, we will be taking your questions, the questions from our audience. For that, you may please use the question tab. Yes, so if you want to pose questions, please use this question tab. You can see it in your GoToWebinar software. In case you cannot see it, you please find for this little orange arrow icon should be somewhere on the top right. If you click on it, you can expand your panel, and then it should show the question box for you attendees. So this is where you can post your questions, and you can post your questions throughout the webinar. We will collect them and address them all in our Q&A round later on. And if you send us a question, please tell us to whom the question is addressed to, so our experts can answer them directly. As usual, please note that this webinar is recorded and documented. The recording will be uploaded to Energypedia, and the link to the webinar documentation is also available already in the chat box. Before we start, let's have a quick look at our agenda. We will start with an introduction keynote by Mrs. Bettina Schmidt, who you can already see on screen. I will hand over to her in just a few minutes. She's the Deputy Head of Division of the BMZ Division tackling the root causes of displacement. And of course, she's here on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. Her keynote will be then followed by a policy presentation from Uganda, from Mr. Osama Kagwa. He's the Acting Assistant Commissioner in the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Department in the Ugandan Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Then we have another policy presentation from Kenya by Mr. Samuel Emase. He's Director Energy at Turkana County Government. And our third presenter from our 3 countries will be Mr. Yisihak Seboka from Ethiopia, and he is the desk head of the Ministry of Water and Energy. After we've listened to all 3 presentations, we will then open up the question and answer round. Again, you can post your questions throughout the webinar. And the question and answer round will be moderated by Mrs. Kathleen Seeger, and she is the head of the GIZ project Energy Solutions for Displacement Settings, ESDS. Yes, before we start with the keynote speech, we have a very quick poll to engage you, our audience. So, yes, I've started the poll now. It's just one simple question that says, have you ever been involved in policy design? Yes, I can see the answers are already dropping in. I'm going to wait a few seconds. Great, thanks for participating. It looks so far very equal. I'll give it another 3 seconds. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And as we can see, we have 56% yes. Wow, that's a surprise. I didn't expect that. So 56% of our attendees today have before been involved in policy design and 44% no. That's quite interesting. Thank you for participating. So, yes, like I said, I already introduced her very quickly. Our first presenter is Mrs. Bettina Schmidt from the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. She's the deputy head of the BMZ Division 501, which is called Tackling the Root Causes of Displacement, Partnership for Prospects. So please, Mrs. Schmidt, the floor is yours. You may now start and turn off your microphone and camera, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear and see me. Yeah, tackling the root cause of displacement, partnership for prospects. This sounds like a complicated name. I hope I can explain it to you later a little bit more in detail. So welcome also from my side, yeah, it's good to be here today, and I actually want to give you a short introduction on today's topic and the project that we specifically support with our partners in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. But let me start a little bit more general. Displacement and migration, as you all know, are huge global challenges. Worldwide, we have more than 100 million displaced people, and they all were forced by war and violence, or human rights violations, or political, ethnic, or religious persecution to flee their homes and face the risk of heading into the unknown. Most of them actually go to their neighboring countries, which are often development countries itself. Responses to these crises should also reflect the severity of the situation. Many displacement situations are protracted. Humanitarian assistance on the one hand and development cooperation on the other, which is providing the medium-term and long-term assistance, they have to work hand in hand. The task and mission of the BMZ is actually to assist people in developing countries in their efforts to live their lives in dignity and to build a future for themselves and for their children. In 2021 alone, the BMZ provided about 5.5 billion euros to reduce root causes of displacements and irregular migration, to support displaced people and to stabilize host communities and reintegrate returnees. A substantial proportion of this amount was used for bilateral, multilateral, and non-governmental development cooperation. But the BMZ has also two crisis instruments which are working in the humanitarian development peace nexus. The one is the transitional development assistance, and the other is the so-called special initiative on displacement, which is actually my division with the complicated name of tackling the root causes of displacement and reintegrating refugees. This special initiatives enables the BMZ to respond in a targeted manner to the challenges emerging from global refugee movements. Between 2014 and 2021, the BMZ supported about 299 projects under this initiative, reaching more than 17.5 million people. The initiatives involves a broad range of activities which address, among other things, the fields of education, employment, health, psychosocial support, and infrastructure, including energy settings and renewable energies. These efforts also foster gender equality and also address discrimination. We are able to deliver flexibly a rapid and targeted response to global refugee crises that includes also the support for host regions, which is very important from our point of view. Our key areas of intervention are support for refugees, internally displaced people and returnees, stabilization of host regions and communities, and mitigation the costs of forced displacement. One of our projects is actually the global program to support UNHCR in the implementation of the Global Compact on Refugees in the humanitarian development peace nexus. A complicated name, but this project includes an energy component, which is called the Energy Solutions for Displacement Settings projects. Germany contributes to UNHCR's Clean Energy Challenge with this project and supports and advises UNHCR technically and strategically on the implementation of its energy strategy 2019 to 2025. This strategy aims to enable refugees, host communities, and people of concern to meet their energy needs in a safe and sustainable way. Of course, for that, the development actors are a very important partner for the humanitarian work and humanitarian actors to work hand in hand. The ESDS project is piloting innovative energy solutions and implementing market-based approaches in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. And we will hear the colleagues from these partners later, and disseminates lessons learned from measures implemented in these 3 pilot countries. The project has currently benefited more than 200,000 people already through its energy access activities. Under its policy intervention, and this is the very important topic for this webinar today, the project supported the development of the Sustainable Energy Response Plan for Refugees and Host Communities in Uganda, the Turkana County Energy Plan in Kenya, and the multi-actor cooking fuel energy strategy in Ethiopia. Alongside the implementation of emergency response, the policy work has set in motion longer-term interventions towards achieving the comprehensive refugee response framework and the Global Compact of Refugee goals. This process incorporates effective transition and integration of humanitarian services into government plans, strategies, and systems, strengthened stakeholder communication, improved resource mobilization, and enabling environment for increased access to sustainable energy solutions are major aspects of this policy framework. The focus on creating framework conditions that encourage the self-reliance of the communities, energy supply by facilitating local market structures. Its main approach is to enable national and regional government stakeholders to share knowledge, lessons learned, and examples of good practice, of which this webinar is a good example. So finally, the challenges involved in addressing displacement will no doubt remain with us for the foreseeable future, and climate-induced displacement will increase. There will continue to be great demands in terms of development policy to create prospects quickly and flexibly for refugees, IDPs, and people from host communities. Gender sensitivity is an integral aspect of this response, which is also reflected in our commitment to the feminist development policy. In these crisis situations, we will continue to focus on our work, which is to build bridges towards sustainable development in the affected areas and regions. So thank you very much. And I look forward to hear more details from my colleagues from Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mrs. Schmidt. That was very insightful. And I think we are now very well introduced by you and into the topic. It has set the scene very well. Thank you. Our next presenter, or let's say the first presenter from one of our 3 countries, is Mr. Usama Kagwa from Uganda. He works as an acting assistant commissioner in the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Department at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. He's also the team leader for the review process of the energy policy in Uganda, where issues of energy in refugee settings have been included. The final draft is expected to be completed before the end of 2022, so he's right in the middle of the process, and I'm sure he can now tell us all about it and maybe also a little bit more. And we are very excited to hear from your insights, Mr. Kagwa. I will say the floor is yours, so please turn on your microphone and your camera and start your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me and see me clearly?
Yes, we can see and hear you very well. That's perfect.
That's perfect. Yes, a good afternoon to you all from Kampala, Uganda. Very happy to be part of this dialogue today, as it's come at a very apt time when we are really in the middle of a number of relevant activities to the refugees and host communities plan that we have. I have a brief presentation prepared to talk about the Sustainable Energy Response Plan for Refugees and Host Communities that the Ministry of Energy, with support from GIZ and key partners, include UNHCR, the World Bank, the Office of the Prime Minister, which is responsible for refugees in Uganda, has developed. This response plan, I must say, was concluded mid this year and launched in August 2022, just 2 or so months ago. Today I'll give you the brief background, the outline of the Sustainable Energy Response Plan, which is abbreviated as the SERPO SAP, and also the development process, what really we had to go through, the consultations, perhaps then highlight some of the challenges that we faced through that, and as well as complementing policies that we believe will be supporting us in implementing sustainable energy in this community. As well as I'm happy to hear from you feedback. As Bettina has highlighted, the plight of refugees globally has been exacerbated by the fact that energy access is still a challenge in those areas. For us in Uganda, even outside the refugee setting, energy access is still a challenge in its own self, with the local population. So you can imagine how much more difficult it is when it comes to these communities. So we have about 41% of the Ugandan population having only access to electricity and living with about 59 or so people without access to electricity. And again, given the nature of the country, it's a low-income country, general population, but again, and also refugees again are found that are placed in the rural settings of this. There's a small community of refugees within the city itself and Kampala itself, this special group, but most of the settlements in the very rural areas. As you can imagine, without access to electricity, the next source of energy only is biomass, creating pressure on the forest cover, but as well also conflict with the local communities. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated a critical need to further advance longer-term resilience and development. And for us, this gave us an opportunity, because when we were just starting the development of this plan, that's when the COVID pandemic hit. But we had the opportunity to actually travel to some of the less restricted settlements to make consultations with the refugees themselves, the host communities, the district local governments, the local authorities who govern these areas, the private sector dealing in these settlements. So I believe that was a good opportunity for us to see how in the face of a pandemic we can address some of these issues. Of course, as you can imagine, energy is not a priority in these areas, and yet it is essential for basic needs for these communities: lighting, cooking, especially, but also a source of income in terms of livelihood is critical for us all, and the refugees inclusive. So that's a bit of the background and the situational analysis that I wanted to share with you. Then move to the next slide. So this plan, at the end of it all, was developed with two strategic objectives. And the first one being the development of sustainable and effective energy solutions that lead directly to increased access to clean, affordable, and reliable energy for refugees and host communities. The second one being enhancing capacity, mobilizing resources, and strengthening systems for effective coordination and management of energy programs that target refugees and host communities in line with the national multi-sectoral policies, strategies, and plans. And I'll try to expand a bit more on those two. The first one really is looking at the technological aspects and the services required for clean energy provision in these areas. And that's why you have, we're looking at things like the clean cooking technologies, improved clean cooking technologies that cover the fuel themselves, but also the stores. Then we're looking at the solar home systems, provision of electricity, extension of the grid. There's now a comprehensive plan that the World Bank is going to support in the refugee settings, with a project which I think is starting early next year for grid extension in these areas, private sector promotion, risk guarantees, and things like that for the private sector, which is often scared of going into such areas, considering that they're of course the objectives to make a profit. But also this, not forgetting the host communities who very often from the consultations we had feel that you'll find that given the rural settings of these communities, there's not much difference between the host communities and the refugees. So you can't leave them out of this service provision. Otherwise, it wasn't the conflict that's already existing. So that's the first objective: the technological, the energy technology and service provision to these communities. And now the second one is looking at what you'd call the software part of the plan, capacity building for sustainability, but also mobilizing resources from the various partners, both from public and private, government, development partners, humanitarian actors, yeah. And then coordination has always been came out strongly during these consultations and continues to come out a lot. There's so many actors within this, but coordinating them, of course, is a responsibility, the overall responsibility of government through the Office of the Prime Minister here in Uganda, where there's the Department for Refugees that handles this. But even still, the challenge is still there, and now this plan also had to look at how best, who are the key relevant stakeholders that should be part of implementation of this sustainable energy response plan in these areas. And the outcomes really we are looking at the end of it all. It's a 4 to 5 year plan. It should be increased access to energy for the households, and also productive usage. Productive usage is very important because it really addresses quite a number of things: improved livelihood, and there's a source of income for the families in there, especially the women and the children. And decreased reliance on biomass for cooking. This also the impact here is felt on the positive impact is felt on the environment through less degradation. Increased involvement of refugees and host communities in program design. Yes, again, this now addresses the second objective, where some of the projects that are being identified, the refugees and host communities in that area have to be part of that project plan and stages. from the design to implementation and the monitoring and evaluation for better ownership. Improved gender mainstreaming across the humanitarian cycle. This came out strongly. Of course, the women are the most affected by the energy disparity in this setting. Improved coordination and collaboration between all stakeholders and across all sectors. As you're aware, energy is more of a support resource for other sectors, be it health, education, productivity, and businesses. So bringing all these people together to coordinate and also support them should be one of the outcomes of a proper, well-implemented plan. Enhanced awareness and increased adoption of the clean energy solutions. This is critical. I think awareness, you just have to keep doing it, but also it has to be strategic in a way. The right message to the right language with what may be fit in another settlement or community may not be the same. Let's say northern Uganda from southern Uganda. Increased resources mobilized, reduced impact on the environment, as I mentioned earlier, and increased access to flexible financing for consumers and businesses. This one is really very important, at least for purposes of sustainability, but also attracting the private sector into these communities. They have to be innovative business models, and these are the things that we keep hearing, but actually having them on the ground has been a challenge. As you're aware, the income levels of these communities is below what perhaps the normal population has. So having these innovative, flexible financing mechanisms that will give sustainability. Go ahead. So the plan, like I said, is a 4-year plan, and in the first year we completed it, and now looking at the issues around developing a secretariat and a steering committee for its implementation. Again, this is working with the key partners, and these are some of the ongoing activities right now. But we'd also want to start right away to have baseline assessments, comprehensive baseline assessments, because you can't measure what you can't improve on what you can't measure. It will also be better for the M&E framework of this. The rest really is again which partners do we deal with now with issues of financial mechanisms, sensitization and awareness campaigns, evaluation of the electricity grid extension. This one my colleagues have I think were in the field about 2 weeks ago to undertake this exercise for grid expansion to the refugee settings, and also issues of crate cooking that have been touched upon. What capacity building is required for who, especially the district local governments, who we feel at the end of it all should be managing this policy and regulation. As was mentioned in my introduction, the energy policy has been revised, and for this section on energy in refugee settings was also included. Continuous implementation will see increasing access to electricity programs and so on. I'm not sure if you can. This is a budget that breaks down the key activities alongside the strategic objectives that I mentioned earlier. Strategic objective 1, which is looking at sustainable and effective energy solutions, and also strategic objective 2, capacity and mobilizing as well as coordination. It comes to a total of about $231 million for it to be effectively achieved. And that's a summary of the project costs, so alongside that. So as I said, we started this activity in 2020 with the support of GIZ, who was able to get us a very competent consultants who worked closely with us at the task force at the ministry, but along also with our partners from UNHCR, the World Bank, and the Office of the Prime Minister. These consultations took place across all the 12 refugee hosting districts, as well as the key ministries, departments, and agencies at the central government level, including the Ministry of Finance for issues of resource mobilization, the National Planning Authority. How do we embed issues of energy into the national plans? Because that was very critical to do that. But also the nexus with water, with health and education. All these are consulted who already have response plans within their sector. We have an education response plan, the water response plan, and the health response plan already. And this was finalized and launched in 25th August, as I mentioned earlier. This really is, again, something I touched upon. How do we want to move? Who do we want to work with? The inner blue circle is looking at the host communities, of course, and the refugees, the primary beneficiaries, but working with the ministry and government ministries and departments, with the donors and investors, the Sustainable Energy Response Plan Steering Committee and the Secretariat that will be at the ministry, as well as the humanitarian development and peace partners to achieve all these. At the end of it all, it's the Uganda Vision 2040 to feed into that. The development and stakeholder consultations that I mentioned really was looking at the issues that are in these communities, in the settlements, but also at the district local government level, who oversee these communities, and the potential solutions that can best address those specific issues within those communities. Again, amongst the stakeholders, like I mentioned, but some quite mentioned, the utility companies who operate in these areas were also consulted, the traders, the local vendors. How do we build the capacity of the local vendors as opposed to imposing the vendors from the capital in Kampala and take them just, but also how do we create sustainability with the local vendors, either through partnerships or training and things like that. I mentioned the challenges were mostly the remoteness of the area, but also the COVID-19 restrictions during that time made it a bit more difficult to travel. Next.
I'm sorry, you've got 2 minutes left now, so
yeah, I think I'm concluding. Yeah, complementing policies, we have the National Development Plan 3, we have the Sustainable Energy Development Program, and district development plans. So every district where the settlements are has its own development plan that we want to work with in implementing these the stuff in that area. Again, and then energy policy, as I mentioned. And also working closely with the CRF Secretariat and the Office of the Prime Minister. Yes, next. Yes. This document is available on the ministry website. I think there's a link that was shared. We're happy to have any feedback or questions if you have any regarding this plan. Thank you very much for listening in. I think I've come to the end of my.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kagwa. Yes, concerning the study you mentioned, we will also provide the link to that study in our chat. And later, of course, you will find it in the webinar documentation on the website, which the link to that site we will also share in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So yes, let's move straight ahead to our next presenter, who is Mr. Samuel Emase from Kenya. He is the AG Director of Energy at the Turkana County Government, and he's an electrical engineer by profession and also a graduate engineer from Kazan State Power Engineering University in Russia. He's a member of the Institute of Directors in Kenya, the Project Management Institute, and the Institute of Ethics and Integrity. He's got a wealth of experience in clean energy and policy development as well as sub-national level and also in the linkage to national governmental processes. So we're very happy to have you here with us today, Mr. Emasi. So please, if you can, please turn on your microphone and camera and start with your presentation. Mr. Emasi, I hope you can hear me. It would be your turn now, so please turn on your microphone and camera and start with your presentation. Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. I think as you've heard, my name is on your screen. Maybe I can request the moderator to move direct to the presentation. Colleagues, thank you very much. I'm going to use as much little time as possible to summarize, actually in a few minutes, what maybe I'm going to present to you. First of all, as you can see, just giving a background or an overview of Turkana County government. As you can see from your screens, is actually one of the largest counties in Kenya, located northwest of Kenyan territory, with a population of, I think by now is nearing to 1 million plus. Male and female population, it is as it is indicated on the slide. The county actually is endowed with quite a number of natural resources, ranging from solar, wind. We also have geothermal and other very important natural or mineral resources. But in terms of connectivity, actually is one of the least connected county, with actually less than 20% connectivity. It's one of the off-grid areas. That means the national grid actually is able to cover a smaller section compared to the other parts of maybe country. Can move to the next slide, please. Several policies actually do exist that assist both the level of government, that is national government. Turkana County actually is one of the devolved units of governance, one of the 47 devolved units of governance. As I just mentioned in my introductory slide, that is one of the actually the largest devolved unit of governance. And we have the national frameworks or policies that guide day-to-day operations. As far as the energy development in the country is concerned, we also have domesticated policies or regulation or frameworks that are being undertaken at sub-county or the county level. As you can see from your screen, under the national frameworks or policies, bills, and acts, top on the list, we have the Constitution of Kenya that actually is one of the guiding tools for both levels of governance. We have National Energy Policy 2018, Energy Act, Kenya Vision 2030. We also have Kenya National Education Strategy 2018-2022, of which now there are plans to extend again for another year, since the objective has not been achieved 100%, although the fruits actually, it did impacted a lot. We also have the National Bioenergy Strategy 2020-2027, Ministry of Energy Gender Policy, and the other bioethanol and of course feed-in tariff. Then at the county level now, where the same county is the host to the refugees or asylum seekers, displaced settings actually. We got a county integrated development plan That is, this is a document that is normally developed. It's a 5-year document. Actually, now as we speak, this County Integrated Development Plan 2022-2027 is underway. I think by January next year, the final document will be in place. That's one of the guiding documents that informs the development and other aspects within the county. We have draft Turkana County Energy. We have a final draft that we did develop with assistance from GIZ. And actually, it's one of the documents that puts together the energy needs, the energy development, being from the refugee setting, the host, all the energy needs and the plans are contained in that document. I think it's in the approval stages, and we're hoping it will be finalized, I think latest early next year, that is January, February. We have Turkana County climate change policy is in place. You also have, please return back small one, just 1 minute. As of the previous, good. We have Turkana County Climate Change, Climate Act 2021, 2020, and then there are plans also to develop Turkana County Climate Action Plan. Then we have Colombia Integrated Development Plan. This is a plan whereby the government came up with it so that it can make sure the host community they are able to coexist with the refugees in a friendly and more humane environment. That's why the Colombia Integrated Development Plan came up, so that this document actually will inform what partners and the government as the coordinating body will inform the development within that region of the county. It's also in phase 2 because the KISDEP 2 is now coming to an end. And then of course, we have the 9-point agenda for the governor, that's the president of the county. And actually it also incorporates the needs and the aspiration of the refugees. Next slide, please. In a nutshell, that status, Turkana County status in terms of connectivity, electricity access. As you can see from your screens, connectivity actually is lower. A thing that actually we are working on as the county government, both, and also the national government. We are hoping in the next 5 years, once we conclude on our county energy policy and also energy sector plan, we look forward to achieving actually quite a lot by 2027. And actually that means if connectivity rate is lower, that means the consumption or the use of biomass is a bit high in the same county, and both in the refugee setting and the host setting, but it's something that the government is working on the plans on how to provide the alternative to the biomass. And that is now also subsidizing the cost of LPGs, bringing in also making sure that the access or the tariff charges are quite friendly to various households in the region. Next slide, please. Mandate of the directorate in the county, actually, as you can see, promotes access to clean energy. Partnership in the county through either and undertakings. Of course, as we all know, the government cannot actually undertake it all by itself. That's why we bring in the private sector the outside NGO world and all that, so that we can all move in the same lane to make sure that the access to this rare commodity is enhanced. We have also capacity building of staff and creation of awareness on clean energy and clean energy cooking technologies, develop county course policies, regulation frameworks, because you cannot undertake this without the guiding, policies, the principle of the act and all that. That's the mandate of the directorate. Collection and maintenance of the data. This actually informs most of the development. You cannot initiate a project or a development without having prior data on, what do you need to take? What do you need now to move to the next step? What do you have? What were there? So that's why the director needs to have a central data that will make it easy, even for private sector, for them actually to be able to inform their development. Carry out feasibility studies and maintenance of data, support developers, establishment of energy centers for promotion of renewable energy technologies, energy efficiencies and conservation, preparation of county energy plans incorporating renewable energy and renewable energy, and of course, fiscal planning to energy resources in the county. Because we need these resources actually to use them sustainability for improvement and eradication of poverty, both in the refugees and the host communities. Next slide, please. Of course, these are some of the pictures, as you can see. Some of the pictures on your screen. Some are when we were undertaking the county-wide consultation on the development of policies, both the sector plan and the energy policy, and of course also some of the capacity buildings, the trainings. People need to see what actually has been, they have been trained on. They also need to see some sample from what has already been done. Extensive public participation, of course. You cannot develop these forums without having public or participation or consultation. You need to put their needs, their views, and this is done both for the host and also the refugees. Next slide, please. Of course, these are some of the we need to come up with the stakeholders or the partners. This the government cannot do alone. However much we need to reduce also on this biomass, we need to provide cheaper sources of energy alternatives to these individuals, to these host community, the refugees. With our county, actually, the refugees and the host, at some point you cannot differentiate because of the integration process of which the county actually has embraced, so that actually these individuals can feel at home and they can feel actually their needs are being addressed by the government. And this initiative, the government actually is trying to come up with ways of mitigating the mass consumption of biomass to provide the alternative sources. And this can be done in conjunction with the private sector and the other key players in the sector. Please, next slide. Turkana County Energy Policy sets a foundation for inclusion of refugee energy, as I had mentioned earlier, has incorporated the provisions of Kenya's Refugees Act. Of course, we have the Refugees Act, the body that actually oversees the needs of the inclusion of refugees matters, in relation and formulation of sustainable development. And of course, that's why it's because of the same idea and the goal of having integration process that actually gave birth to Kalobeye Socioeconomic Development Plan. And actually its work is actually to make sure the partners working within that area or the region are able actually to work in collaboration, not in isolation, so that we reduce duplication. And of course, the having dotted project which might not have what we call major impact. And the role of government or the county government in this is to make sure the coordination is well done. Then we have ensuring social attention to women and children. Of course, as you know, when it comes to energy, we need women is a priority because these are the key people, especially in these counties, in these settings that bear actually the negative impacts of the biomass emissions and all that. That's why they need to be brought on the table. All their views needs to be documented so that as we plan, as we develop the project that are going to assist these people, we have their views and needs at our fingertips. Next, please.
You've got, oh, you're almost done. I was just going to say you have a minute left.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Karibu.
Asante sana. Yes, thank you, Emasi, for this. Thank you so much, Emasi, for this very insightful presentation. Yeah, please, dear audience, I remind you again, you may post your questions throughout the webinar. We will collect them and address them just now when our question and answer round starts in a few minutes. Before that, we have our third presenter waiting in the line. He's from Ethiopia. His name is Mr. Yisihak Seboka Meskele, that's the full name. He is the head of the Renewable Energy Technology Design and Testing Desk at the Ministry of Water and Energy in Ethiopia. He's got a professional experience of more than 30 years working in different energy sectors, and he holds a Master of Science degree in chemistry from Tashkent State University. Wow, that is going to be interesting as well. So please, Mr. Seboka, if you hear me, you may now turn on your camera and your microphone and start presenting. And you have 15 minutes for your presentation before we move to the question and answer round. And please, dear audience, again, when you post a question, please let us know to whom the question is addressed to. Thank you very much. Mr. Seboka, I hope you can hear me. Please turn on your microphone and camera. Okay, it seems like we have a problem here, unfortunately, because we have lost Mr. Seboka. It seems. Yes. Okay, I would then suggest, Kathleen, if it's okay with you, that we jumpstart to the question and answer round. And if Mr. Seboka is available again, I would tune him in and yeah. So yes, sorry about that. We hope to connect again with Mr. Seboka in a few minutes, but we are being flexible, and I would now move the floor to my colleague, Mrs. Kathleen Seeger. She is the head of the GIZ ESDS project, that's Energy Solutions and Displacement Settings, and she will moderate the question and answer round just now. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Diane, and warm welcome from my side. So I have the honor to moderate the question and answer part of our today's webinar. And it was already quite interesting to listen to our two speakers and also to our keynote speaker. And I feel that that is the first time that we actually meet in such an environment concerning all the policy work we have supported during the last 4 years, actually. And I got already a first question to Mr. Osama Kagwe from Uganda. I will just read it out, and I think it's from a very good colleague of us from Tactical Action. One of the key issues I observed in Uganda displacement settings is the rather large array of pilots and small projects occurring throughout the settlements. Many missed opportunities to build on the learnings and successes of previous efforts. Is there a plan within the SURP for upgrading information management systems that will allow administrators and policymakers to understand better who is doing what, when, and where? It's a quite interesting question, I think, and yeah, I would like to invite Mr. Kagwe to give us his thoughts on this question from Practical Action. Thanks.
Yes, please, Mr. Kagwe, join us again, and I would also like to ask Mr. Emase to turn on camera again to join us for the question and answer round. So please, both of you, turn on again your camera and microphones to answer the questions from our audience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen. I didn't quite catch who the question came from, but I believe it was an issue again that I highlighted in my presentation. The coordination of these players came out strongly as wanting. Like the person mentioned, the too many people doing similar things. Duplication of activities and projects, reporting on some things, and this is something now we want to clean up with a better reporting structure, with better coordination mechanism that the secretariat. In the secretariat for the SAP, we have put in place a requirement for an M&E specialist who will also assist in tracking who's doing what, some kind of database or dashboard showing us which partners are in what settlement, what are they doing, how much has been done in terms of targets and indicators, and that's why also we're talking about having this baseline assessments done at the beginning of implementing this plan. So that is the challenge we find ourselves in. And we take note of it, but we have a plan that we work with the already existing structure, especially the comprehensive refugee response framework housed in the office of the Prime Minister Secretariat to coordinate this. It's a challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking that out. I think it's a challenge, and we have a second question too related to that, also addressed to you. What are the challenges in bringing key stakeholders together, and how did you address them? It's also to Team Uganda.
Again, the challenge is usually with especially the implementing partners. How can I put it? Lack of releasing information from the different partners. You know, there's a kind of worry about not wanting to share information regarding the activities they're doing. So that is one thing now that we need to start with creating that openness amongst the stakeholders in terms of sharing information on the activities that are being done as well. More regular meetings, interfacing with these people, because previously energy has not been at the core of government response in this area. It's been mostly in health, education, and water provision, where there's been a lot of government presence. Energy services have been mostly left to the humanitarian actors and the NGOs and like that without that cross coordination from government, and this is where the sustainable energy response plan comes in.
Thank you, Mr. Kagwe. Please, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat so that I can ask our presenters to answer them. I'm not sure if we have our Ethiopian colleague with us already. I don't think so. At least I don't see.
Yes, we do. He's back in the line, Kathleen. So
Okay.
yes, if you don't mind, I would ask him to give his presentation.
Yes,
So,
and then we continue with the Q&A. Thank you.
Yes, thank you also. I just need to go back to the start, so sorry about this, everyone. Yes, this is where we were. Mr. Seboka Meskele from Ethiopia. I can see that he's in the line now, and he's already turned on his camera and also microphone. Hello, Mr. Seboka. Good to see you. We can't hear you yet. So you should be audible. You should be unmuted, but we cannot hear you yet. Yes,
hello?
We can hear some. Yes, hello.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so I will jump start into your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe my name, as you presented, I'm presenting the Ethiopia energy policy from the Ministry of Water and Energy on the role of energy policy in shaping energy access dialogue in displacement context. In the energy, in this, in our energy policy, we have 5 sections in the policy. In the please next slide for the context. We have the overview of the energy sector, key energy sector issues, energy policy goals and objectives, then cross-cutting energy policy issues. Finally, we have the multi-actor cooking fuel energy strategy in displacement setting, that is from 2022 to 2030. On the overview of Ethiopia energy sector, Ethiopia is endowed with a variety of energy potential such as hydro, wind, geothermal, solar, bioenergy, and hydrocarbon. As you know, biomass accounts for 87%, huge amount, and then modern fuels like hydrocarbon and electricity is only 13%. Next slide, please. The key energy sector issues are, one of them is energy poverty. As you know, in the energy, we have less than 47% electric access in our country. More than 16 million people is without electricity in the off-grid areas. Electricity per capita is like 100 kilowatts per year. As you know, African average is 500 kilowatt hours. We are 5 times less than even African average. There is also high dependence and unsustainable use of biomass resources. Nearly, as I said, 60 million tons of biomass is consumed for fuel, with about 81% in the estimated 60 million households using firewood and so on. The household sector is a major energy consumer. The other is wasteful and inefficient energy production, transportation, and utilization. That is high energy loss and low saving practice. Other is low institutional, human, and technological capacity. One of the major bottlenecks in Ethiopia is energy scene remains to be limited capacity in human, technical, and also lack of stable institutional arrangement. The development of vibrant energy sector requires substantial development of energy sector management, investment, technical know-how, and so on. Low private sector participation. That is, private sector participation in the development and supply of energy services remains very limited. creating the favorable environment for private sector participation in the sector will require a substantial effort in our country. Then we have a high dependence on imported petroleum fuels. These imported petroleum fuels, it takes our spends large amount of this export earning for importing petroleum products. This putting pressure on foreign currency reserves. And the other is weak enforcement of standards and reliable energy data. As you know, we have weak energy data. We have no reliable such data and so on. And there is also environmental and climate change. As you know, climate change depends in our country. Most of the electricity is depending on the hydropower, and this hydropower electricity generation, which is susceptible to climate change. The country is prone to recurrent droughts and so on. Due to that, climate change disturbs our hydropower, so we have to mix the energy technologies. Other thing, lack of youth empowerment for job creation and so on. The youth, the youngsters should be participated in the energy sector also. There is also insufficient technology transfer and use of local manufacturing. Most of the technologies are imported, so we have to just incentivize local manufacturing in our country. Equitable access to the development of the sector for people with disabilities and vulnerable communities also. Strengthened regional and international cooperation is regionally and also internationally we have to cooperate. The other is vision and mission for the energy policy. The vision is to deliver affordable, reliable and equitable clean energy that will enable universal prosperity to all citizens of Ethiopia by 2030. Mission is play a significant role for socio-economic development and transformation of the country through provision of a sustainable, reliable, affordable and quality energy service for all sectors and society in an environmentally engaged manner. Next slide, please. For the goals and objectives, the goal is to ensure availability, accessibility, affordability, safety, and reliability of energy services to support accelerated and sustainable socio-economic development, urbanization, and transformation of the country. Next slide. For the objectives, ensure that affordable modern energy is available to all sectors, increase energy security and reliability by focusing on energy efficiency and energy loss reduction, as well as the development of diverse renewable energy sources, strengthen energy sector governance and build strong energy institutions. We lack strong energy institutions, so we have to build very strong energy institution also. Encourage the participation of the private investors and create a conducive environment for them to play a leading role in the sector. Reduce and eliminate energy poverty. Reduce and eliminate energy poverty. Increase women's empowerment. Strengthen the social and economic benefits of the youth, disabled, and vulnerable sections of the society by creating job opportunities in the energy sector. Ensure that energy supply and utilization in line with environmental, social, safety, and sustainability standards. Accelerate regional energy integration. Thank you. Next slide, please. In the supply side, especially for cooking and baking, we are using largely biomass energy like wood. The second photo you have seen bamboo. Like bamboo is a fast growing tree. We have a large amount of bamboo potential. We have about 1 million hectares of bamboo forest in Ethiopia. And also we have the third picture. You see also this Juliflora wood. We have also the cotton seed agricultural residue, cotton seed, sesame stalk, coffee husk, and also for the supply side, we can use also briquettes from agricultural residue and so on. Next slide, please. In the demand side, in the household or the residential, industry, transport, service, and the agricultural sector. For the residential and household sectors, we have the improved stoves, and also in the lighting like solar and so on. In the industry, we have different types of technologies also. In the service sector, in the agriculture also. This next slide. In the household, the sector cooking demand side, increased dissemination and adoption of fuel efficient stoves in rural and urban areas. In the first picture, you see charcoal stove. Then we have seen ethanol stove, electric stove, and finally, at the bottom, we have seen wood stoves. This increased substitution of woody biomass from primary sector by other renewables such as solar, biogas, and so on. Increased substitution of dung and agricultural waste by other renewable energy carriers in the urban and the rural areas also. Thank you. In the service sector, in the policy objectives, ensure use of efficient modern energy technologies. In this policy, in our policy document, refuge camps are considered as service sectors. In the picture, you see one of the refuge camp in Ethiopia. Refuge camps is included in the service sector, like and also in the service sector, as you know, hotels, restaurants, and so also are included together with refugee camps also. Please, next slide. Cross-cutting energy policy issues, energy regulatory frameworks, energy sector governance, building strong energy institution and capacity. We have here in the energy institution and capacity, we have very weak energy institutions. We have to strengthen this energy institution, the capacity also. Integrated energy planning is also there, energy efficiency and conservation, energy pricing, we have research and development issues, environmental and social impacts also there. We have also the gender. We have, as you know, there is a big load on the women's, and also we have regional and international cooperation. Next slide, please. We have in the strategy document, in multi-actor cooking energy service for refugees and host communities in Ethiopia, we prepared a strategic document. Strategy document is from 2022 to up to 2030. Please, next slide.
We would have 2 minutes left now, as I would also like to answer some questions from the audience. So okay. Just for your information, yes, thank you.
I will finish with that. As in the context and situation analysis of the strategy document, as of March 2022, the country hosted about 844, 549 registered refugees and asylum seekers. The refugees numbers are here as indicated in the picture. Please, next slide. This is one of a workshop we conducted, validation, review, and endorsement of the strategic document. In this, engaged different core team consisting of UNHCR, RRS, Refugees and Return Service, GIZ, and the Ministry of Water and Energy, playing a big role in here. Private sectors also included, participated also here. Thank you. Next slide. We have in the strategy, we have 6 goals. Goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe it's better to skip to this one. Next slide. The challenges, we have lack of prioritization of cooking energy, short-term sporadic and piecemeal intervention, lack of long-term programming, poor stakeholder coordination, significant funding gap, shortage of funds, weak resource mobilization, insufficient data and evidence based to guide the planning of cooking energy interventions, weak monitoring and evaluation, poverty and the lack of affordability of modern cooking products and services, undeveloped market and low private sector investment, social and structured cultural norms, gender inequality, limited capacity alternatives. Please, next slide. Please, next slide. Here, arrangement of strategy implementation, high-level multi-actor cooking energy steering group is there, about 10 members drawn for this. The permanent members are United Nations Higher Commission for Refugees, UNHCR, RRS, Ministry of Water and Energy. Current chairperson is from Humanitarian Energy and Environment Working Group. Clean Cooking Alliance Ethiopia. This is from the private sectors also. There are also rotating members from private sectors, donors, and so on. This next slide. The way forward, support partners in implementation of pledge made by the Global Refugee Forum and the National Energy Strategy, support potential for attracting partners in the renewable energy sector, expand the provisions of alternative energy solutions to ensure sustainability and cost-efficient options for refugees and host communities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saboka. We're very glad that we could put you back in the line. So we've got 10 minutes left now for questions and answers, and we do have some questions from our audience dropping in. So thank you for that. You can still post your questions, of course, and please let us know to whom the question is addressed to. And may I now ask all panelists, Mr. Kagwa, Mr. Saboka, Mr. Emase, to turn on their cameras and microphones again, so for you to answer some questions. Thank you. And also Mrs. Schmidt, if she would like to, of course.
So I start with the Q&A round again. I have one question for all members of the audience. This is concerning the work of the development partners. How can development partners effectively support in bridging the energy gap? So because we heard quite a lot of that there are gaps actually in the agenda of energy. So what kind of role does or can development partners play in your country? Maybe I hand that question over to our colleague from Kenya, to Mr. Imasi. Do you want to start first?
I can start, no problem. Okay, thank you very much for that question. I can say it's just a direct question. Actually, the role we need our partners actually to play actually more is actually maybe on the issue of capacity building. Capacity building is in terms of staff, also the communities, also the awareness. We call public forums awareness or participation, so that actually, you know, sometimes we can have availability of alternative sources of energy, that's especially clean cooking or whatever, that the refugees or the host communities can use, but you'll find that maybe some of them are not even aware how to access some of these very key commodities. Of course, the issue of you know, awareness, capacity building, and of course supporting the government in terms of maybe policy developments also is very key. So sometimes you'll find that coming up with some of these policies, because government, some spending of the government is informed by also some of the policies in place, because these are public funds. You cannot just use it now. You need to have some critical policies, of which, if the needs of the refugees and the communities are, you know, incorporated during, you know, the development of these policies, actually at the implementation stages, it becomes easy to roll out some of these programs. Maybe the issue of policy development, the issue of capacity building, and I think we can also talk in terms of, you know, sometimes some of the alternative sources of energy, like maybe clean cooking technologies, they are a bit expensive, or some of these, the refugees or asylum seekers, they are not able to afford. So that means we need also a bit of kind of relief, or, you know, subsidy to some of the initial prices of some of these key items to be actually or to be supported by also the government too. I think that's what I can input in that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Imasi. I don't know, Mr. Kagwa, do you want to complement from Uganda your views? Or should I pose the next question, because we still have some very interesting questions which I would really like to raise to you?
Oh, okay, just in addition to Samuel's good points, to me it's an issue of resources. Yeah, I think this is, for us, is the most critical in light of what's happening in the world, the global economy, the national economy. Things are getting tighter with competing priorities. So you'll find that energy now for refugee settings will be the last, or no, will be among the least prioritized areas. And look, that's for the national governments, but even for the development partners. I mean, wherever respective governments are as well, the global economy has not been doing too well. So it's strengthening the resources mobilization towards these efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kagwa. I would like to raise another question, which goes also to our panelists. Have panelists found UNHCR response plans useful, both in terms of defining energy needs in refugee settlements and in terms of drawing resources to the humanitarian energy sector? So, to my knowledge, we have these response plans at the moment only in Uganda, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So I think we could probably start with Mr. Kagwa and then go maybe to also Ethiopia to answer this question. Over to you, Osama.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question clearly.
Okay. Have panelists found UNHCR's response plans useful, both in terms of defining energy needs in refugee settlements and in terms of drawing resources to the humanitarian energy sector? So it goes about yeah, the UNHCR response plans, how useful do you think they are? And I think in Uganda we have not only an energy response plan, but we also have the health response plan and so on. So how useful is it from your point of view?
Well, I think I would like to say it's useful, but I can only speak for the energy response plan in this case, and also the fact that it's just starting out, so we don't really have something to score against at the moment until maybe sometime next year when we're doing the implementation. But from what my colleagues in other sectors have had, I think it's definitely something that is good in terms of planning for these communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any responses from Mr. Imase or Sebuka on that question?
Thank you. In Ethiopia also, as you know, we have an energy strategy for keeping fuel. This is in support of the government. Our ministry is involved in that energy strategy document. We are in the near future, we have a plan to implement this strategy. We are just now drafting the implementation plan. So we are very, this is a very important for Ethiopia to include the refugees and the host communities in our energy strategy. And so we are eager to this very important energy strategy for cooking fuel energy.
Okay, many thanks. So I think we only have 2 minutes left, and maybe I would like to do a very, very short 1 minute last round of one question to all of you. So what do you think is the most important impact for refugees having now a policy in place concerning energy and refugee needs? One sentence, what is the most important impact from your point of view? And yeah, maybe I would like to ask Mr. Imasi to go first.
Catherine, I think the most important impact is that these people are able to get access, to clean energy through connections, either by programs supported by the government, the environment created, friendly environment created by the government for NGOs, for stakeholders, for partners, for private sector. In fact, for our case, because since the government cannot able to electrify them using our government corporate or the company, we have provided actually an alternative for private sector to provide electricity to the refugees and the host community surrounding, actually with, of course, regulations and the policies set out by the government. So they are not able to be either exploited by, rogue or suppliers or whatever. The government is able actually to oversee which kind of power they are able to get, and because the standards applies whether you're providing power to the refugees or to the host community.
Okay, thank you. Same question to Mr. Sebuka to Ethiopia. What do you think is the most important impact for refugees?
The most important thing for refugees, as you know, just providing, it's not possible to give power and the electrical stoves and so on to the refugees. So it's better to support them with clean cooking stoves. And also we are also, most of the refugees are in the border areas. We have also trying to support with some resources like ethanol, to provide them also ethanol in some areas. We tried also with supporting with briquettes in the raw material from the surrounding areas, in the refuge areas, because it's not possible or affordable to give power from grid or also from other electric. So we are trying to support them with other alternative options to all of them. Because of that, this cooking fuel energy strategy is very important for the refugees in the host community in the displaced areas.
Thank you, Mr. Seboka. And the same question goes to Mr. Kagwa. Very short, because we already have overtime. Sorry for that.
Yes, thanks. I think I'll just say sustainability in the grand sense of the word. You know, from the fuel sources, the technologies, but also the utilization and also issues of productive use here. People need to keep earning from these energy sources to get an income and improve their livelihood to make it sustainable. So that's my parting shot.
Many thanks, Mr. Kagwa, and I would like to hand over to Diane for the final words. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, of course, to our wonderful panelists today. Thanks for staying in the line, and sorry for the 3 minutes overtime that we took, but I think it was worth it. It's always nice to have the opportunity to pose questions directly. So thanks again also to our audience. As I said earlier, the webinar is being recorded, and you can find the webinar documentation on the link that you can see here on the Energypedia website. And we also dropped this link into the chat. And before we stop or quit with this webinar, let me kindly tell you that we have another webinar coming up next week on the topic of e-waste management and also in the humanitarian contexts. On 23rd November, that is, you can find the registration link to this oncoming webinar also in the chat box. So yes, we would be very happy to see you all there again, and please have a nice afternoon or evening wherever you may be located, and thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.